Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing okay today. Looks like a somewhat rainy day out there, maybe. We're going to go ahead and get started, and hopefully, everyone will show up in a few minutes. Been really enjoying looking at the submissions for the retouching. A lot of great work there. There's also a couple tips I want to go over when we get to it about cropping that I think will be helpful. But let me look here at my agenda. So what we're going to be doing is in the moment images due today by 2:30. Then we're going to review the retouching challenge. And then we're going to start the colorization layout project. And then lastly, we're going to try to do screen sharing. For those of you who have made progress, we will go through and talk briefly about each of the fruit plates that we've got so far. And we're going to try to continue these conversations as time permits. What I would like for you to have done in the background is have your fruit plate project open in Photoshop if you have uh, any work accomplished on it, so that when we get to the screen sharing later on, it'll be a little bit quicker. So go ahead and get that ready. And then I am going to um, attempt to screen share with you on the retouching project. Let's do that. So if no one has used Zoom before, if anyone hasn't used it, there's a share screen button, green button near the bottom of your Zoom window. And that's what I'll be pressing. And then I get to choose, in this case, desktop or Photoshop. So I am going to open up Photoshop here, but first let's go to the desktop. So I just want to go over here because I really want you to get into the habit of when you get an assignment from your boss or a client, whether it's called a creative brief, directions, whatever you want to call it, I really want you to pay attention to the specifications. Okay, so down here I have for both part 1 and part 3 portrait format. Then I have the dimensions 4 inches by 6. So if this is going into, say, like a picture frame, I picked 4 by 6 for that. And the 72 DPI, normally you'd want at least a 300 DPI for something printed. But the image that I found online was of a low quality, so I did not bump it up. And then I wanted it at black and white, layered with names as a Photoshop document. So some of you went above and beyond and started coloring it, which was not part of the specs, but I appreciate your enthusiasm because the colorization project will be about coloring. So it's good practice. But I wanted to show you specifically a cropping trick that might be useful in future projects for you. So I'm going to exit here and go over to Photoshop. And then hopefully everyone can see that original image in my Photoshop. I am going to make a little bit more room here. Okay. So I have this image here and I need it to be 4 by 6. And there's a number of ways you can do that. The way that I found was easiest for this project when I did it was C for crop, right? And then up here, you have different options. As you click on anything in the Adobe products, this contextual command line changes. So up here, you have different sort of presets, and then you can make your own. So what one of the options is you can specify a width, height, resolution, 4 by 6, and then 72 is the resolution, okay? So here's the preview pane that we have here, what we've got. So I don't want to just settle with what Photoshop is going to give me by default. And I also want to look at what I have for the image and what I think might be interesting. And some of you kind of zoomed in and some of you kind of played off of the asymmetrical versus symmetrical positioning, and that's fine. So I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I'm going to show you, if you don't already know this, with this in this proportional setting, if I hold and click this, you'll see that grid, 3 by 3 grid. And what I mentioned before, images with people's faces, if you can get the eye, right, into that space, whether it's this eye or the other eye, it's going to be more psychologically appealing to our brains, right? So if I hold down the shift, I can move things over 10 clicks instead of 1 by 1, right? So this is a little bit, if I were to stick it here, I'd be cropping out the left or the right arm a little bit, which is okay. But I'd be focusing in more on the face, and this eye or this eye would both be a good spot for these intersections, okay? So everybody has a dominant eye. Even if you look at people with really strong symmetrical faces, everyone has a dominant eye. And in my opinion, because of the shading of this picture, it's this one. And that is often considered the better one to align your photo with if there's room. If I was to have if this was a cover on a magazine or something, this would give me space for text potentially. But also, I'm going to hit return. It presents an asymmetrical design where we have this sort of diagonal line here, and it really makes this part of the composition have more weight, okay? So if I wanted to change that, right, I got this back here, and I want you to be very comfortable with making these edits as you're learning, especially, so that you're not afraid to like mess up. So make sure to save at least one copy of your file, right? So if I wanted something a little bit more symmetrical and centered, this would be the more obvious choice. This is a more typical choice, but whichever one is fine. So the other thing that I noticed, because it didn't seem like people read the specifications, was the lack of black and white. And so you can change your image in a number of ways to accommodate that. The easiest one is to use this adjustment layer, and it'll create that on top of your original layer, right? So when I was looking at submissions, I could see that there was still color in a lot of the images without an adjustment layer. So this satisfies the requirements for black and white with this project. If you were to finish this, you would export it in some format TIFF or JPEG or whatever, and that would be as black and white. But for right now, I'm just looking to make sure that you understand the tools that we have available without actually having to change the image itself directly. But by and large, people who are working this did a pretty good job. The shirt and the grass are easier to work with. The skin in the face was a challenge. And for me personally, the eyes. I don't know if anyone else agrees with me, but getting the eyes to look right was a real challenge. Um, and so this eye with the scratch through it and this eye with maybe hair, maybe a scratch, it was very challenging. Um, so I do want to show you Ryan's submissions. Ryan, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So Ryan brought up some things from the videos about reusing eyes and parts. Totally, yeah. I just want you to be aware of something, and I know that Ryan's aware of this. So let me zoom in on this. I thought she did a pretty good job here. When I did this on my own, my eyes looked like the child was possessed or crazy. It did not look good. But she did a pretty good job here. And then here's the other one. And the reason to me that this one is less successful as it is, I think that she's done a great job here. Mom, let me do a view. Let me see if I can get this here. Close that one. Let's see. Let me do a view comparison here for you. Okay. Is that the eye is too identical, right? It's not quite right. This one, because there's still some artifacts left there, it looks a little bit more unique. So I think if I were to play with this more, I would try to define it a little bit more as its own eye, if that makes sense. But I think it's still great, great work here. And a lot of you have done really good work with this. Again, with coloring and so forth, going above that and beyond. Great job. So I'm really impressed, really glad to see it. People are putting effort into this. Your answers to the questions were really good. I hope that you enjoyed watching the videos, seeing how other people do some of this work. Um, and wanted to open it up for questions. Does anyone have any questions on this project specifically? So there's a lot of silence. So, okay. So what I want to do is I want to give you the opportunity to go back and make changes on this project. So I haven't closed it. So especially with the cropping and any other things, black and white, whatnot, I'd like for you to go back and submit a third version of it, and I'll give you points for that, obviously. But what we're learning is how to work with the tools, how to do creative problem solving, and I want to give you as much opportunity to do that as possible in our class. So I'm going to have that be due by 2:30 of next Tuesday. If you want to go back and give it another shot, go ahead. Again, I don't need coloring on this one. We're going to save that for the colorization project. So I really do want you to focus on, just working on the basics of retouching and then really remembering to look at specifications for the projects. Okay, so I'm going to move along then. Let's see here. Okay, colorization. So I'm going to close this sharing and open up another one. Get that ready. Okay, so someone had a question about cropping. And so if you're in Photoshop, let me go back. So what you want to be careful is you want to make sure that the resolution is set to where you need it first. Okay, so some of you had attempted to do 4:6, but the resolution is off. So if you look at the actual image size, it didn't quite get there. So let me go in here and show you what I mean. Okay, there's so many. All right. Well, I'm just going to use Ryan's example here for a moment. All right, so if I were to take this image here, go into image size. Okay, so this resolution needs to be 72, right? This this is not quite right, right? So we would want this to be actually at the correct dimensions. So let's look here, here, and if this is at 4:6 by 72, and if we hit that, let's see if we can get there. All right, then, so I just recropped the image, and we've got 4:6 by 72. Okay, so you really want to make sure that that resolution is set properly before you do anything with the width and height. And also, if you're not careful and you don't do the cropping in the right order, your image might end up being too skinny or too fat. The vertical and the horizontal may not be cropped properly. So I'm undoing that again. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change the resolution size just to show you again. So if I have a resolution set, and this is not going to improve because we can't actually add resolution information It's just going to add more memory without making it better. Okay. So if I look at this image again, an image size, all right, so it's 5.08, 7.64. So that's not what we want. We would want to change it to 72. It's going to make it smaller. And then when we crop it, let's get that in there. All right. With this with height resolution, I want to make sure that I go through those and then hit return. And assuming it's going to accept it, crop, then look at image again. And it should be correct. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but once you get the hang of it, it actually helps you to have the right size as long as you have the correct resolution when you crop it. So I hope that helped. And again, like I said, if you want to resubmit anything and get some of those points back, this is a great way to do that because many of you were not quite right there. Either the resolution off or the width and height were not quite there. And you want to be careful not to just manually crop it and hope that you get 4:6. It's never going to be as accurate as if you use one of those tools. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. Okay, good. So this is a student that was in this class the prior year as yourself, and she did a great job, and she's still with Kirkwood, I believe. And what we're going to be doing is you're going to take some of the images, and you're going to do another before and after. So you're going to have a B for before and A for after. And again, you don't need to use all the images. You're just looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And then you're going to have the before be unaltered. And what you want to do with the after is keep it at the same proportion. And then you're going to target a couple elements in that image. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit on this. So this one, the boy has some new shoes. This is a like I think like a World War II photo where there's not a lot of goods to be had, and he's very, very happy to have these shoes. So the student decided to highlight that. So this is not just technical use of Photoshop. That's definitely a part of it, but also thinking, what about this image can I focus on with color? You'll see a lot of advertisements, especially like jewelry, where they have everything in black and white, and then like something will be red or gold. And it's kind of what we're doing here. So we're choosing what to emphasize in the image that we think would be interesting. So in this one, the bear and the hair makes a nice connection across the image. Student decided to give some skin tone to Elvis, and then the hat and jacket. And then this one, this is in Disneyland. It's a cafeteria back in the 50s or 60s. So they decided to do Snow White. So basically, that's this part. Then you're going to choose one of these images to do the entire thing in color. Okay, so not a new one, not like a seventh or anything. You're going to choose one of these images that you chose in here, and you're going to do the whole thing in color. Okay, you're going to use layers and selections, and you're going to name your layers, and it's going to be packaged from InDesign with all of your files. Uh, you really probably don't need fancy fonts. This template should be available to download from Talent along with the photos. And it's just basically there to help you get more experience with choosing what to color and then colorizing the whole thing. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So if you're still not sure how to package from InDesign, I can go over that again. But just be careful when you do it from InDesign to make sure all of your files are included. So it should generate an IDM file, an InDesign file, a PDF file, and then folders with your assets in it. So make sure all of those are in there together before you package that and zip it, and then upload that to Talon. But this should be fairly easy, and some people really get into it. Some people really enjoy coloring images. I think that's awesome. Um, but this will be due basically by next class period as well. And then, any other questions on this at the moment? Okay. So what you learn doing this, if you go on and continue like in illustration or in video work, there'll be some definite crossover there. So if you end up going into film production, and some of these techniques will cross over as well, which is pretty cool. So we went through that very quickly. If we like, we could start talking about the fruit plate, but I think what I'd like to do is just give everyone some time to do some more work on it before we begin at 4 o'clock. So we've basically got an hour of in-class work time. So I think that's what'll be best used for this. So let's go ahead and meet back at 4 with everyone having their fruit plate project ready to go. Um, and then we can hopefully do a quick screen share and talk briefly about each project where we're at. Does that work for everyone? For the question, are we good to leave and work? Yeah, go ahead and leave. Just make sure you're back by 4 o'clock today. And then we're gonna do the quick sort of virtual critique discussion, okay? Yep. All right, we'll see you in about an hour. Okay, can everyone see the poster, the dogs? So yeah, just really quickly, I just want to go over some things with InDesign packaging. So I just whipped this up, and if you press W, you can switch between the sort of preview mode and work mode. And so I set up my bleeds, made sure my image went to at least that reddish orange edge or beyond it, in case it got cut off. I have one image and some text, so very simple. And what I'm going to show you is something for you to be aware of. So if I go to File, Package, there you should get a summary page. And I have this caution symbol for my image because it's using RGB, and print typically wants you to use CMYK. So if you go through all these, you can check. So I encourage you to go through these just to get used to it. But definitely if you've got an error, you want to fix it. Make sure to check your bleeds, all that stuff in InDesign. So before I package this, I'm going to do what I should do, and I'm going to change this RGB image to a CMYK. And what I do is I go into Photoshop. Here we go. So when you have a JPEG, it's usually going to be, well, it has to be an RGB typically, but you can change it in Photoshop to CMYK for print, which uses different color palette. And the easiest way to do that is to go to Image, Mode, and then go from RGB to CMYK. But you want to make sure that you don't override an original image. So I always do a Save As, and then I do that. And so I already made an RGB image or a CMYK image earlier, simply by making a copy of my JPEG, going up to Image, Mode, CMYK. Okay, so printers will be very happy if you do this because that's what they're expecting. So if you're making vector shapes from Illustrator or some other program, make sure those are in CMYK2 for most printers. Your PDF will print out more correctly if you do that. So once you have that CMYK version in your image folder, when you have your files, you should have a main directory that your InDesign document is in, main folder, and then inside there, you usually have a subfolder called images or assets or whatever you want to call it. And then you want to relink this to your CMYK. Gotta move some stuff over here. go. And then when you go to File, Package, you should not have any more error messages there. You're going to hit Package. Yep, I'm going to save it. And then I have to specify where that's going to be. So I'm going to do that in there. So many, and then hit Package. And I usually leave the defaults on, but you can change those as needed. And then this warns you about copyright. So you should have IDML, INDD, PDF, and everything else there. And then you're going to compress or zip this, and that's what you should upload into Talon. Sorry about the delay in that. Okay, now let's get to some of these documents. So I'm going to go ahead and stop share here. All right, so we're just going to go through and take about a minute each. And let's go ahead and start with Omar. If you could screen share with us your progress on your fruit plate. Very nice. Yeah, so just looking at this, the drop shadow on the glass and the muffin are too severe for this shape. It makes them look more like a cutout, but the arrangement and things are good. The reflections are coming along. There's some issues over here with the lighting, but overall it's coming along very well. Omar, do you have anything you want to add?
No.
No? Okay. Okay, go ahead and turn off your screen sharing. So, Haley, could you go next, please? There we go. Oh, you got a background. Awesome. Good. You got some transparency going on in the glass. So, to my eyes, the muffin doesn't quite look like it's sitting on the table. Um, there's some unusual sort of, I don't know what to call it, like white streaks on the plate.
Okay.
Um, and then also, it looks like the plate is at a different angle than the table, like or
Okay.
the background. The background feels almost like it's straight up and down ish,
Yeah.
and the
Mhm.
plate is at an angle.
Okay.
So you might want to play with that some more.
Okay.
Let's coming along. Good selections. All right, let's go ahead and close this one. Okay, Olivia, front focused image there. Okay, so I feel like the shadow in front is a little bit um, too crisp, especially in the edge towards us.
Okay.
Um, there aren't really any reflections on the plate that we would expect. So, and also some of the black edge is a little bit uneven. The selections are looking really good. I would just pay a little bit more attention to lighting. Overall, when I kind of squint, the lighting seems fairly uniform where it should be. And the glass, also, the shadow doesn't look like it's coming off the table in the right direction.
Yeah.
But you've got transparency going on there. Yeah, that's really coming along nicely. Good job.
Thanks.
Okay, let's close that. Okay, Augusto.
So I lost uh my stuff because it was in the computer in Kirkwood
Uh-huh.
or at Kirkwood, so I had to restart it,
Okay.
and
Yep.
that's where I'm at.
Yep. These things happen. We'll just try to prevent it in the future. Yeah, so you've got some good selection outlines there. Is this just your temporary background to help you see objects or what?
Yeah, I was just trying to get rid of the white
Uh-huh.
around the plate better, and
Cool.
so I just put it and never take it out
Yeah.
until I add something else to the background.
Yeah, so the kiwi looks a little bit strangely ridged, like it was painted or something. I'm not sure how else to describe it. The top, I think that's a kiwi, the nose.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
the kiwi looks like it might be like over painted or something. I'm not sure how to
yeah, what I
describe
was
that.
doing is I was trying to paint it with a paintbrush and multiply and lighten just to get the right colors, and then I was gonna come back and put
Hmm.
pattern on top of it so it
Okay.
looks like the actual hairs from the kiwi.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I think your grapes are looking good and everything. So yeah, it's good progress. Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Keaton. Oh,
Better?
it's
Okay.
looking that's looking really good. Um, I think once you put a background in there, that'll add some more challenge to it. The one
Okay.
area that really I think is a little bit problematic besides some of the reflections is those blue grapes and the coconut
Yeah,
area.
I was
Um,
trying to.
yeah, you're creating a problem for yourself because of how the light would reflect off of that with an object. It I think you added more complexity to it. But
Okay.
I think if you can find a shape that's similar to that at home and look at the right lighting level, you might be able to resolve it because you have the light coming towards the blue grapes, and then you have the light
Yeah.
coming like from behind the coconut and the other areas. So it might just mean that you'll need to put something else instead of the blue grapes in front of the coconut. I don't know,
Okay.
but that looks like a problem that you'll be facing.
Okay.
But overall, it's looking really good. Good job.
Thanks. Okay.
Bree? Yeah, go ahead, Bree. All right. Well, this is looking really good. The reflections, the reflections, I think, on the green grapes are a little bit too symmetrical in one direction, if that makes sense. Um, but they're fairly clean, and you've done a great job with the selections, and the lighting is looking pretty uniform. The one area that I think kind of draws my attention away is the sheen on the top right of the orange seems very bright compared to say like the strawberry and the orange. Does that make sense, Bree?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. But overall, it's very good. I think when you get a background in there, you'll reposition some things, but it's looking very nice. Very good. Okay, Peyton. All right. Make me think picnic time here. Okay, very good. I feel like the plate isn't on the same level as the table quite yet. So you'll need to decide when you get to that point if you want to group your plate and everything on together and move that, or if you want to try to manipulate the background so that they kind of feel like they're on the same plane. Uh,
Okay.
but I think the lighting of the tablecloth works really well with the fruit plate lighting. If you see the front of your plate, there's a kind of a jagged edge.
Yeah, I was moving the fruit around, so right before we started this, so I haven't, like the one in the back
Hmm.
too.
Yeah, yeah. There's definitely some like pixels that are not quite
Mhm.
right in here, but overall, the fruit is working pretty well. I kind of feel like, in comparison of things going on here, your muffin might be too small, and
Mhm.
maybe your glass too. Like your glass and muffin feel about the right size together, but your strawberries, your banana and apples and things seem really big compared. So you might want to go back and maybe think about the sizings. But the
Okay.
composition and the selections is working pretty well. Yeah,
Okay.
good job.
Thank you.
Hmm. Livia, those are some furry kiwi. Um, so in this one, I have to say those bananas are kind of small and tiny, which isn't necessarily a problem. I feel like it's kind of like a little bit in the opposite direction of Peyton's. Um, the plate is in the upper right corner towards the cup looks a little deformed. Does that seem right to you, Livy?
Yeah, I went in and like completely reconstructed the plate basically.
Oh,
So, but
but
yeah, I can fix that.
yeah, I have to say there's a sort of like, I don't know what you did because I'm not seeing your file yet, but like the lighting is all very muted and neutral. Like maybe a little bit too much. I don't know. It looks like it might be like it makes me feel like this is lit in under fluorescent lighting, like in a big box store or something. It has that sort of dull lighting across it. But I have to say, whatever you did to those, are those blueberries that you put in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, they look really good. The blueberries, the orange, there's a lot of great attention to detail in here. You did a great job. Um, I just might think about maybe making the bananas a little bit bigger. Um, and of course, I know you're going to be adding some more fruit in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking really sharp.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good job. Okay. Hunter, are you here or are you being kicked out again? Let me see. Okay, I don't think she's here. Okay. Why don't we go to Nathan?
Can you see it? I think.
Yes. Yes, I
Okay.
can.
Good.
Good. Whoa. Okay. So definitely you'll be working on your reflections and some
Yep.
of your selections on the blue grapes or blueberries are a little bit rough still. Let's see. And then once you get your background, that'll change a couple things. Overall, it's coming together very nicely, I think. Yeah. I like the kind of asymmetrical sort of angle you've got there. The only thing that doesn't feel as balanced is the way that you have that plate on just next to the muffin and the glass of juice. Um, but yeah, once you enter in a background in there, you may change some things up, but it's looking good.
Okay.
Yeah. One other thing you might want to consider doing is moving the slice, the orange slice, away from where it is because it kind of blends in a little bit too much with the shape of the orange that's behind it.
Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, you could probably put that orange somewhere else that would give it a little bit more of a contrast.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's looking good. Excellent.
All right.
Yep. Okay, Nadine, are you still here? Go ahead and present. That is a lot of fruit. So you might want to consider reducing the quantity of fruit. This is your project, so you can do it, but it's just going to add a lot more time to your work. Also, because the two red apples, you may need to change them a little bit more if you keep them both. They kind of look the same. And the same with the strawberries, especially, look very similar because they're just sort of stacked in the rows, the same sort of positioning. So, just to anyone, if you're going to be repeating any images, you're going to want to find a way to make it look a little bit more unique because even though fruit is fairly symmetrical in some ways, if you have a piece of fruit next to another one, they will be slightly different. Does that make sense, Nadine?
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a very ambitious fruit plate. So you might want to just tone it down a little bit in terms of how many bananas and, just make it less work for yourself. But I think overall the composition is okay. It's just very full, very, very full of food there. And then just watch out for some of your shadows, like the kiwi and the muffin. There's probably not enough shadow between those two if you keep those together. The shadow in front of the orange and the kiwi is pretty good. But yeah, I would strongly recommend reducing as much fruit as you have and then, see where things are at. But it's looking really good. Good selections. Ash, are you able to present?
Oh, there.
Okay, that's looking, wow. So again, this doesn't feel as full as the last one. So I think this is a little bit easier to work with. But again, you have a lot of repetition. So if you look at, say, like the kiwi slices that you have there, they look very similar to each other. Same thing with the orange, especially the strawberry. So if you are going to, continue to use these specific pieces of fruit, you're going to want to find a way to slightly alter them so they look a little bit different from one another, especially when they're next to each other. And then
Mhm.
I think you're also going to need to add some grapes in here too. The transparency in your glass is very strong, which may or may not work. Sometimes people go overboard and they can't tell that there's actually any glass there. So when you get a background behind it, you'll be able to tell if you need to ease off on that or not. But overall, it's very well balanced. You've got things definitely, located in certain areas. You're going to need to work a little bit on some of the shadows between, like behind the kiwi in front of the bananas and things like that. But overall, it's coming along very nicely. Good job,
Thanks.
Rachel. All right, so you've got some strong selections going on. You're working with the plate. And I know that some of you have mentioned to me that, like previously, you've left your work at school or the internet ate it or whatever. So unfortunately, that's the reality. But yeah, so you'll be interested in seeing this further along. Good. I think, yeah, your selection of the muffin's looking good. Thanks for sharing. Okay, Mitchell, I think you might be the last one. Is there anyone else after Mitchell?
So this is what we're working with.
So you'll definitely need to add in some reflections.
Yeah.
And yeah, so who was it? Was it Keaton or someone else who had the blue fruit in front of the coconut? I can't remember now. So again, I think that you've got it darker, like what you would expect there more. Um, it's still going to be a little bit of a challenge. I feel like the blue grapes and the strawberry and the coconut kind of work well together, but the brightness of the strawberry to their left is maybe a little bit off.
This one right
Uh,
here.
yeah.
Okay.
It could just be my eyes, but it looks like it's just not quite in the same lighting. The bananas and the plate are looking good. I noticed that a number of, and I know that this is the plate itself sucks, the original image, but there's this sort of sheen across the front that makes the plate look like it's sort of melted a little bit. Yeah, like uneven with going from like right under the kiwi area and then over. You see
Mhm.
that? Yeah. So it might just be a strange reflection issue, or an artifact of what was there before. And then same thing in the back. It looks a little bit uneven above the green apple area.
Okay.
Yeah. But your selections on the fruit are looking good. And I look forward to seeing it as you add the oranges and the other things to it. So great job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So good job, everyone. Just very briefly before we let you go, so make sure if you're going to do revisions for the retouching challenge to get those in before next Tuesday, and then the colorization before Tuesday. And as you have time, go ahead and keep working on this fruit plate. And I really do recommend, if you're able, be safe, to get some fruit and lighting and look at how the angles of the lighting and the shadow play out. But I'm very, very pleased to see everyone working on this, and you're doing a great job. So have a safe and good weekend, and we'll talk again next week.